Hi, I'm Spencer Krause. I've been building robots for over 20 years. In that time, I've seen a lot of interesting things, and I've heard a lot of interesting stories. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is a place where my peers and I can relax, have a drink, and talk about some of the crazier things we've seen at work and some of the experiences we've had that have gotten us to where we are today. Subscribe today to join the collaboration. Welcome to the Collaborative Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Krause. Our guest today is Tony Kelbert. He can eat an entire Chipotle burrito without dropping anything, and he's been known to make a part from time to time. Tony, welcome to the pod.
Hey, glad to be on, Spencer.
Glad to have you on.
Appreciate it. I do like that you led with my biggest strength. That truly is a piece of my personal identity and professional identity, whether I like it or not at this point. So.
It did crack me up that you put that on your LinkedIn. I, as you know, used to work for Formlogic, same as you, and so I was kind of scoping out the next batch, and I just thought it was funny, and I'm like, get to know this guy.
My acceptance rate went way up after I put that in there. Like, I really think people kind of just like to connect with a real person rather than, some working stiff and polo and khakis, which, to be fair, is me most of the time, but there's other parts of that too. So yeah, no, it's kind of an interesting lesson in personal branding. I hate that term, phrase, all that kind of stuff, but yeah, just be who you are somewhat unapologetically, and you'll meet people like you, for better or worse.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, I've definitely gone through my phases on that too. I used to swear a lot more. I've noticed I'm tuning that down kind of as I grow my business and my personal brand. But
well, yeah, that,
well, it can be off-putting to some.
Options. Yeah, you want to keep your options as wide as possible, and that puts some people off, so that makes sense.
But it's still fun. I mean, if you meet somebody else who's gifted in the swearing arts, it can be good. I had a meeting today where I was talking to a sensor specialist, I'll say, so I don't know who it was. And, they dropped a shit in, and I'm like, I dropped an F-bomb in, and it was fun. We had like a little, we trusted each other.
Well, that's interesting. And I find that I trust people who don't censor themselves more than I do that people are kind stopping themselves, because if you're managing that part of who you are, I don't know, I'd rather just talk to you as a person, which is, kind of my approach to most everything, actually, is
I think that's
connect as people.
Somewhat universal, right? So, I mean, as human beings, I think we need vulnerability to build trust. And if you don't show vulnerability before the other person, then it's kind of like this game of chicken where both people are afraid to kind of show past the facade. And so you never build more than a superficial relationship.
That's really interesting. Okay, so I'll give you a little backstory on who I am as a person, but I'm very open with people. I kind of trust by default and then back off when you show me that I can't trust you. And people, that's gotten me burned a couple of times, but honestly, I still kind of approach life like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not really. I've got a few little marks here and there, but I haven't done anything really, really high risk in that way, and I read once that trust and vulnerability, you build that up through bids, where it's here, I'll put this out there. All right. And it builds over time. And so if you're the first one to go, that's fine. It'll either be reciprocated or not, but you'll know something about the person by doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I've definitely put myself out there and told a personal story to somebody who was you're like, oh no, I'm being judged really hard right now.
Yeah.
This feels awkward. But you don't do business with that person typically. You're like, okay, well, I don't think I can trust this person. That's okay.
So I'm kind of interested to hear, and I'm familiar with what you've said about the Siemens inspection and maintenance robot, but I guess what other applications have you seen that are really interesting in field robotics?
I mean, sure, right? So in my opinion, I mean, this is in the article I just put out, commercial construction and mining, just some of the ADAS features you see on these giant, 2- and 4-story high mining vehicles are pretty neat.
Yeah.
really just because of the scale of the vehicle. To be honest, the features aren't that novel. It's like keeping it from hitting itself, or like waypoint to waypoint navigation with like RTK corrected GPS. An indoor,
Yep.
you tend to use SLAM for that. In caves, you can use IMUs a lot. Like, it just depends on your environment.
Wait, hold up. IMUs.
Inertial
What?
measurement unit. So it's like
Oh, okay. Okay.
like what they have on a submarine, so it knows where it's at, even though it doesn't really interact
So
with the
it's
outside
just
world.
like a trailing, like I accelerated by X meters per second in this direction, which means that my
Yeah.
new head is
So like if
this
you
way.
imagine like if you've got like accelerometers that go in all directions and gyroscopes, and like
Yep.
you're resistant to motion effectively, rotationally and translationally. And so
Yeah.
like, if you have a big weight on a bunch of springs, and then I move, all of a sudden, like the springs are going to stretch and the weight's going to stay behind for a second. So
Yep.
if you do that, but then you put string pots on the strings as well, so now you can see the displacement, you can do some calculus and you can figure out what your acceleration looks like.
Yeah.
Typically it's the other way around, and I think you're measuring acceleration and you're doing integrals to figure out velocity and then distance. I think
Yep.
that's how it goes. It's been a while
You're
since
doing
I took those
derivatives.
courses.
Yeah.
Yeah, derivative. Thank you. Yeah.
That's interesting. So okay, we went to the aquarium as a family on Sunday, and I saw a slocum glider there. Have you ever seen those? So
Slocum glider.
yeah,
No, I don't think
it
so.
looks
What is
like
that?
it looks like a torpedo, and it's like heavy on this end, and it's got an air canister on this end, and then wings out the side. And so what it does is it increases buoyancy on this end, which draws it this way, and then it decreases buoyancy on this end and increases buoyancy on this end by opening up the valve between them, and then it comes back up to the surface. And so it kind of does this sine wave pattern, but in doing so, it like swims through the water.
Huh.
So on a single charge of compressed air, they can go like a few hundred miles.
Well, that's pretty
And
cool.
I thought it'd be so fun to build one because they're so cheap. Like it's not complicated, it's just
So it's all like
a
float
valve.
valves out of your toilet and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you could probably build it for a couple $100. Completely unnecessary. I have no application for it. It'd just be fun to have it swimming around out there and reporting back occasionally. But
Yeah,
anyway.
that sounds awesome. Did you know that Collaborative with Spencer Krause now has a merch store? Please go to cwskmerch.com for the latest in CWSK styles. You can get a hoodie, like the one I'm wearing, t-shirts, hell, we even have whiskey glasses. Everything in the store has custom art that our team worked really, really hard on. So go ahead and show your support for them, me, and the rest of the CWSK team by going to cwskmerch.com today. Better yet, support yourself and use discount code PODCAST10, all one word, all uppercase, for 10% off your entire order. Thanks for your support and enjoy the rest of the show. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is sponsored by SKA Robotics. If you're in the market for elite field robotics expertise, please consider hiring SKA Robotics. They sponsor this podcast and solve some of the toughest engineering problems in the world. SKA Robotics can be found at skarobotics.com.
Yeah, so we both worked at Formlogic. I think we kind of we passed each other. Like I think you came on just after I left.
I think it was the other way around. I think I was there right before you, and then you came in.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
Gotcha.
I mean, it was kind of a transient place. Like nobody was there for a long time. Like
Yeah, that's fair.
there were a
That's
couple
fair.
people, but like for the most
Yep.
part, like people didn't do a whole lot of time at Formlogic.
Yeah, it seemed that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I really enjoyed my time there. So actually how I got started at Formlogic, I responded to an ad on LinkedIn, and it was like, hey, we'll give you, X number of dollars for your experience working with machine shops. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I've been in aerospace for a while. I've got a good understanding of how machine shops work and stuff. So ended up doing that interview, and I was like, hey, this actually was really enjoyable, and I'd love to consult with you and give you some more information on what's happening in the aerospace industry. It looked like that's where they were headed. So that's what I did for the next year and a half or two, is really kind of map out the ideal customer profile on, as they were getting things launched.
That sounds fun.
Pre-technical development. So
That's cool. So you were doing BD for them. I had no idea. I thought you were in an
Yeah.
engineering role.
No, no, I don't know enough about CNC machining to be in an engineering role
I
there.
was in an engineering role, and I knew very little about CNC machining. So my title was Director of Advanced Projects there. And
Beautiful.
it,
That's a
I
wonderful
don't know what it
title.
means either, Tony.
That's a good one.
Thanks.
I think there's a line from The Office, like, I want to be director of special projects. I just float around and do whatever I want.
My life.
Anyway.
So, like, basically.
Yep. When I signed on at Formlogic, I was actually really impressed with the amount of customer development that they had done. Like, I mean, there's a substantial number of customer interviews, of which, I was part, obviously, um, but yeah, then really kind of teasing through those and figuring out what the actual customer needs are. And it's what ultimately led them to focus primarily on the new space industry as far for primary clients. So
Well, that's interesting. Well, so maybe you were there before me then, because I definitely focused. I mean, they were doing a lot in space when I was there, so you might have proceeded.
Yeah,
I was there
I
like
was like
2021-ish, 2022.
Yeah, I was 2019 to 2021.
Oh,
So,
got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. But yeah, no, that was really cool. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's kind of interesting. Like, I've been an engineer all my life. I've never really been in a business development role or anything like that. So it was kind of cool to be able to apply like the typical rigor that you would apply to an engineering problem to a business problem, and really start sorting out like, okay, what do they value? What is the market size? Who's competing? All of these things, and piecing it together into a solvable problem, which was really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah. So I've kind of tried to carry that approach through the remainder of my career too. Is like, if you could approach everything from first principles, like, and then you get to a solution that other people already know, like, it might seem like a waste of time, but actually, like, you're digging underneath it and understanding it at a level that your competitors don't, which is actually pretty valuable. So that's
Well, to be honest, like the pray and spray approach to BD does not work unless you're in. Well, I don't know if it works. Like, I just am not confident that it's an effective way to do business development. Like, I think you have to be a little more strategic than that. I mean, there's something to be said for persistence, right? So there's a new sales guy I hired, and he'll say, patient persistence pays, which I really like.
Okay, yeah.
And I kind of agree with that. I mean, there's like something to be said just for the fundamentals, like following up, but then also like, who do you follow up with? Are they sales qualified? Are they the right customers? Do they actually need what you've got?
Right.
So like that's a big thing.
And no, so full disclosure, like I'm kind of pivoting out of engineering because I'm realizing that sales and marketing. Yeah. All right. Yeah. That's funny. But yeah, I'm realizing like not a lot of people speak engineeringese. You know what I mean? Like, it's a specific language unto itself, and like, and engineers are kind of a hard group of people to talk to. So if you can, like, there's actually a fairly large market there of opportunity for me. And if you come on as somebody who's just like, hey, I'm really curious to learn what you know, because I can probably hook you up with something that'll make your job easier, like that. That seems to resonate with people. So
yeah.
And yeah, everybody wins in that situation. So
sure. Well, I mean, I think that's the kind of the whole point of ethical sales is to provide value. I mean, to like, to make it better than it was when you got. It's not to trick someone into making a purchase that they regret, which is a misconception I think about sales, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, so this is pretty interesting, and I think the reason that salesmen get such a bad rap is because the really good salesmen, you don't know they're salesmen. You don't even.
I don't know that that's even necessarily true all the time. I mean, you're probably right. Like, you look at them as like an advocate and an ally, but like, I mean, I don't think there's any shame in being a salesperson. Like, I mean, I think that it's a noble profession. I mean, like, you could build the greatest mousetrap in the world, and without sales, nobody would know it existed, right? I mean, that's a
fair,
Zig Ziglar quote, and so he's regarded as one of the greatest American salesmen. But his approach is very classical. Like, I've been educating myself a lot on sales lately, and just reading every book I can find and practicing it. And I mean, I don't know. Like, there's not a whole lot of approaches that say to be incognito as a salesperson, but like, you definitely don't want to be salesy, right? Like, you don't want to seem like, what can I do to get you in this car today? Or like, sign this contract you're not going to feel good about signing later. Like, I wouldn't advocate for that. But I think that
Right.
there's a misconception that, that people think that's what sales is, and that's where, like, the salesy kind of vibe comes from. And so,
Yeah.
like,
So I'll uh I'll fill that in a bit. And I had a conversation with the best salesman I've ever met, and a guy at Walmart that wanted to get me to sign up for something I didn't need. And so, like, they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum. One guy is doing really well for himself. The other guy is doing what he has to do to pay the bills, and it comes across in their sales style because the the high volume, low value sales guys are like, "Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go." The key how I'm going to make my sales is just the faster I can get through my spiel. You hear me, and then you decide. And the other guy that I talked to, I only found out after the fact that I'm pretty sure he was selling me something, but I sold the idea back to him. I was like, "Hey, I wonder if this might work." And then I realized later, like, no, he planted that idea in my head, fostered it, got me to realize
huh.
it for myself. And then I knew him as a person with a solution, which is interesting because I haven't confirmed that yet. But, like, ideally, that's how sales goes, is you lead people to understand this is the best option, and they're the ones choosing it, and then you support them after the
Yeah,
sale,
no,
like
I think that's right. Yeah, so,
yeah, it's
yeah.
it's very interesting, though, because I think, on the sales side of things, like, we get so used to like, I have you ever heard I think it's an Indian expression, but it's like, "Empty pots make the loudest sound?"
I don't think I've heard that before.
Okay. Well, it's commentary on people who aren't particularly intelligent. But I think it follows over into sales too. Like, if you're not very skilled at it, like, it's very obvious that, like, okay, I represent dollars to you. And if you are skilled at it, it's like,
Well, I think
no,
it's
there
more
needs
like
to be
you
more
represent
relation.
dollars to me is the what comes from the
Yes.
salesperson. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
like
exactly.
the ignorant salesperson. To your point.
Yep. Yep. So I don't know. I think we get and they're very visible, right? Like that bad sales you can spot them a mile away, and good sales, they're hard to it's hard to see it even happening. So,
Yeah, I suppose that can be true, but, like, I don't know. Maybe it's the idealist in me. I still have to believe that, like, there's nothing wrong with sales, and you shouldn't have to hide the fact that you're doing it. And so, like, to me, it's a matter of definition. Like, I define sales as, like, just helping somebody arrive at the right conclusion, right? And so it's
yeah.
like, and if that right conclusion isn't what I'm selling, like, that's okay too. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of, like, what
Well,
makes sense for them.
I think that's the key differentiator, and it's like you said, you're like trying to get somebody into a car they don't need, don't want. Like that's that's the wrong approach. But if you're like, you need transport, I sell cars, but also you don't actually need that. Like the farthest you go away is a mile. Like why don't you just get a cheap bike that's going to work for you better? Like
Well, it builds
that's somebody
trust,
to build
right? I
a
mean, like,
relationship.
that's kind of
Exactly.
it. Like, if you give a piece
Because
of information that's perceived to go against your business interest, it builds trust, with
yep,
your prospect. And
yep.
so, like, that's a big thing. I mean, I don't know. I was just in a car dealership earlier today, as you and I were talking about before we hit record, and I remember, like, the guy was pretty good. Like, he wasn't. Like, I mean, I set it up on the auspice that it was going to be a certain model of car that I test drove, and it was a
Mhm.
slightly different one, and that eroded trust. But then at the end, I was like, I really want that other model. He was like, well, you want what you want. And I was like, okay. Like, at least he's not
All right.
clingy, and I can.
But that can go 2 ways too. Like, you can double down and you can say like, "Okay, but I have this here. This is on my inventory. If I can unload it on this sucker, then that's off my inventory. That solves my
Well, I
near-term
do think
problem."
he was
But
doing that a little bit, right? Which is why I didn't end up buying anything.
he
And,
backed
yeah.
off.
But he
Yeah.
also, like, I mean, he gave up on it when he saw how much it mattered to me. He was like, I was like, no, I really want this model. Like, it's got,
Yep.
200 more horsepower. That's what I'm going for. And
Yep.
he was like, well, I'm sorry, we can't do it. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. I still really
Yeah.
want it. And he was like, all
Yeah.
right.
But he lost the sale, but not you as a customer the next time
I think
around.
that's right.
I
Yeah,
don't
he
know,
he still kind of kept the high road and didn't try to pressure me into something I would regret.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's definitely the right route because I think that's exactly the approach that you see too long is people, people getting shoehorned into something they don't actually want because it benefits the person selling. And like Nobody wants to
Yeah,
do
but I
that.
mean, how many times have you returned something that you bought under that, under duress, effectively? Because you get home and you start thinking about it, and you're like, I don't really want this thing. Why did I buy that? That's stupid. Buyer's remorse. You're like, and then you go back and you're
Yeah.
like, I'd like to return this, please. Like
Yep.
I did that. I bought an expensive bottle of perfume that I kind of got pressured by a salesperson into buying. It was like,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I'm never going to use perfume. Why the hell did I buy this? Like, this is stupid. Like I don't even like perfume. What the heck is wrong with me? Like, oh, the salesman pressured me into buying it. Like, she was
Yep.
very compelling at the time, but it wasn't a
Yep.
lasting sale. And then I bought a car that I really didn't like. It had like a rusty underside. It was a used car,
Mhm.
and like it wasn't even a color I liked. And like I just got pressured into buying it. And then I took it home and I hated it. And I was like, I brought it back the next day. I was like, I don't want this car.
I don't want it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, and if there's room for that, that's obviously the right. So there's a sales. Oh my goodness, a lot of people move to Florida from other places, myself included. So 5 years ago, we moved down to Wisconsin into a neighborhood that we didn't know, we didn't have any background on, and ADT shows up on your door trying to sell you a security system and like basically telling you that your house will be broken into the instant, unless you buy this from them.
in which
But then
case,
I
it'll
looked at
still get broken into.
yeah, exactly. It'll just know about it. It'll make a lot of noise and irritate the heck out of you.
Yep.
Um, but they have a 3-year lockup because they know that is their window of opportunity. As somebody moves in, they decide then on little information whether or not they're going to choose to do this or not, and then they lock them up for 3 years on this contract.
Oh, that's
So
interesting. But you're never buying another ADT system again, though. If you have
no,
buyer's remorse on a 3-year lockup, you're just going to be like,
no,
F these guys. I never want one again as long as I live.
exactly. Yep. And realistically, I'll probably never buy a security system again because like it was just obnoxious, you know?
Yeah.
So, but they got me for 3 years and I regretted it the whole time. But what are you
Brutal.
going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not buy another one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Learning experience. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm finding like, so full disclosure on the business that I'm building, I have a few key partners right now.
Is this Good
Kind of,
Think Labs?
yeah. So Good Think Labs that's my side business and it's many things, but what it's turning into as far as getting me from where I want to go or from where I am as a W-2 employee to fully self-employed, what it's serving
Oh,
as is
you'll circle back the other side, right? I did that, and now I'm a W-2 again. It's,
yeah,
W-2 for SKA Robotics.
yeah. But for now, what it's giving me is the opportunity to be a concierge for manufacturing. So like finding manufacturing partners that I've either used in the past or that I have a relationship with and trust. And then, everybody that I talk to on LinkedIn, it's a sales conversation and it's a mutually beneficial sales conversation because I know the people in the industry and I know who's trustworthy, who delivers good stuff and am able to make those connections. So that's the overall goal, is to be always able to talk to somebody about how they can meet a specific need they have better with a whole portfolio of people that I'm working with.
So you're effectively
And
a manufacturer's rep.
basically, yeah, but yeah, I mean, fair enough.
There's a name for that.
Well, see, here's the thing. I'm getting into this from first principles, so I don't always know those names.
Fair enough. That's awesome.
But yeah. But anyway, that's kind of the goal there. But so we pivoted off into sales for a while, but
Sales is fun.
it is fun because I don't know, it touches on how people work and how they process stuff.
Well,
and
and you're
that's
still
fascinating.
creating value and improving the state of the world. I mean, you're just connecting dots in a different way,
Yeah, and that's pretty interesting. That's a good point. The value you create is by matching people.
With stuff they actually want and need, and
Yes.
acting as an advocate for them.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting, man. I'm telling you what, this might have to be a therapy session instead of a podcast. That's some
Yeah, I
stuff
mean, it can be
to
both.
do right.
Well, there's no shame in sales, right? Like if I have to
Right.
like repeat like one mantra here, it's that it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a 4-letter word, but like it's not. It's not a bad word.
Have you ever heard of target fixation?
I can imagine what it means, but tell me in your
Okay.
own words.
Okay, so like on a race course, like a motorcycle race course, a lot of times there'll be a bend, and like you can look up target fixation on YouTube. But
No, I think I
What?
know what you're talking about.
yeah, but people are like, don't hit the car, don't hit the car, right into the side of the thing.
Because if you're staring at it, you steer toward it
You
intuitively.
will,
Yeah.
no matter what, because you're focusing so hard on avoiding it that you just careen right into the side of the thing.
Yep.
Like it's funny, there's like a motocross race or something on YouTube, and a photographer parks his car on the outside of a corner, and like 3 people smash into the side of it. He moves it. It's not a particularly difficult corner, and everybody makes it around the corner. It's insane. And so the no shame in sales thing, all that says is shame sales to me. You know, it's very
that's
weird.
interesting.
Yeah, they have to cultivate it in a different mentality, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, sales is great. Look at it.
There you go.
Sales makes the world go round. I mean, like,
yeah, there you go. We're getting closer.
It's lubricant for, commerce and human progress, and
we're backtracking.
it's the only way that engineering ever gets done in the first place, because you wouldn't have financing for it without sales.
That's true. Yep.
Sorry, I'm trying to lead from a positive rather than a negative.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense though. But yeah, no product ever gets accomplished without somebody selling it first.
Right. Yeah, because otherwise nobody's paying for it, and you're just in a vacuum.
And it's interesting too, because there are things like, so on the marketing side, like, people don't even know they want certain things. They don't even know that certain things exist. And then, like, once you bring them out in front of them and say, like, oh, and also the salesman's job is to say, and here's how it applies to your process in your specific situation. So I think that's probably the perfect blend of marketing and sales, is like, identify a need or make your prospect realize a need, and then match them up with it in a way that's tailored to them. Like that, I don't know. That makes a lot of sense to me. There it is.
Or like, be okay if they don't. Like, a lot of it's
well, that's true too.
I mean, do you know the term sales qualification?
I mean, kind of.
Yeah, fair enough. I figured you did. I just, first principles, to your point.
Yeah.
And so for people listening that don't know, like engineers, it's effectively, like making sure that the person that you're talking to actually has the ability and the will to want to buy the thing that you're selling to them. And so, I mean, and I would argue that it's just as important to disqualify, a non-sales qualified lead as it is to qualify a sales qualified lead.
And what's interesting too is like the best relationships that I've developed in sales, like, sure, they converted to sales, that's fine, but also like that relationship is basically like even keel the whole time, and the prospect never really understands that, like, oh, I was sold something. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, no, it set me up with what I needed,
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I think that's right. I don't know if it's like you're tricking someone though. Like, I think that's the main difference in how we're thinking about it. Like, I feel like
that's the thing.
Like, they never even realize. I'm like, no, I'm openly selling to people. Like,
yeah.
But like, not with malice. Like, with intent to find people that need what I've got. Or just so happen to need what I've got. And so it's like, if I'm talking to like a Caterpillar, and I know that they could use advanced R&D support for their autonomy initiatives, I'm like, hey guys, what do you need? Like, let's figure out a way to make this work. Oh, you don't need it? Okay, no problem. Like, not a big deal.
Right. No, that's cool, and I like that approach.
Great.
Like I said,
happy to do it. Like, here's how we'd get it done. Okay, that sounds good.
And here's who we've done this before and what that looked like at the end. And by all means, talk with them. That's fine. Like,
yeah, exactly. I'm finding myself having to make that argument less and less. Like, I feel like my reputation and my company's reputation has been getting like good enough that like I'll catch myself still doing it, being like, and here's who we've worked with, and this, but like a lot of times people come in knowing, and that's marketing having done its job, Tony. So like it's pretty great,
I mean,
right?
Yeah, that's interesting, where like you don't have to substantiate your value anymore. You understand it, and you're just looking for people that need it. I mean, that's a cool position to be in, and I think that represents a certain level of maturity in a business too. And
yeah, or it just means the marketing's working, but people perceive it as like a business is. But it's the same thing. Like, to your point, right? I mean, it's like people buy 3M adhesives because they have good marketing, and it's understood that they're good at what they do because they have good marketing. So.
Yeah. No, that's pretty interesting. So I guess
you buy your iPhone because they have good marketing.
Yeah. Well, I buy my iPhone because I bought an iPhone 10 years ago and I can't get away from it.
Yeah,
I'm
fair
stuck in
enough.
their ecosystem, which is fine. It works.
I bought my first iPhone because I had an Android phone that exploded in my pocket. The battery swelled up and the screen cracked from internal pressure. And then
Yeah.
Android told me that I must have dropped it because their flowchart said cracked screen equals customer drop.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
said, F you, like
Yeah.
I know how this broke, and it was because, the battery swelled up and cracked the screen from
Yeah.
the inside. I mean, the phone power cycled. Like, there was a documented issue, and it was the Pixel 4a, where they
Okay.
bent a flex circuit at 180 degrees, and it shorts against the chassis,
Oh,
and it
sure.
caused that issue. And, like, this customer service rep, I don't think they lied to me intentionally, but I think that they were,
Yeah.
there's a few times that's happened, and I'm just like never gonna buy from those guys again. So I got an iPhone.
Yeah.
It was 4 times as expensive, and I just cut off my nose to spite my face.
Yep.
But after that,
Yep.
I'm like, all right, yeah, these are pretty good. Like,
Mhm.
it just works, Tony.
Yep. Oh boy.
Well, that's the
Yep.
marketing, right?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, that's cool. Um, my iPhone has started shocking me when I plug it into charge, so I
oh
think it's
no,
time for a new one. That's
yeah,
probably time. But
yeah.
um,
Well, mine. I mean, they got me with the trick they do where like it just fills up and it has a memory leak. And it gets
yeah.
bigger and bigger, and you're like, oh no, I'm out of space. I guess I gotta upgrade. And then you
Yep.
upgrade, and all of a sudden it's got like 50 more gigabytes than it had, and you're like, what the?
How'd that
You could
happen?
do that before. Like, why didn't you just do that while you were my phone? Like,
That'd be great.
I got. Yeah, exactly. There's just 50
Yeah.
gigabytes of fluff it used to sell me a new phone.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're nearing the end of the episode, so I feel like we should rein it in.
Yeah, probably. Seems
What?
like we talked a lot about sales,
Well, no,
so
I mean,
that's
there's
cool.
nothing wrong with
Yeah,
sales. Like again,
exactly. Yeah.
sales is
No.
beautiful and great, and it's the next frontier for you and for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm
Fair enough.
I was an engineer, then I became a project manager, and now I'm a salesman.
There you go.
And you were an
There you go.
engineer, and I don't know if you were a project manager, but now it seems like
Oh
you're on the
goodness.
route to becoming a salesman, but you're still clinging to the
Yeah.
identity of being in it. But like it's like I'm still an engineer. Like I never stopped being
Yep.
an engineer. Like I know my calculus to some extent. It's
Yeah.
like I've put a bunch of things together and
Debatable. No, I'm kidding.
yeah. And
Uh,
I mean I know how to like solder and draw a
yeah.
schematic and I mean GD&T to some extent. Like I'm not amazing. I'm like 40% of the way to being a software engineer, 60% of the way to being a mechanical engineer,
Yep.
60% of the way to being an electrical engineer, and I'm a damn good systems engineer. But
There you
like I'm
go.
still a salesman. I'm
Yep.
That's my main job these days.
Yep.
So I don't
I
know.
I always I always told people when I was like I'm an engineer that's good at talking to people, and that's unique,
There's
like
not that many
it's
of us.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
So like what are you doing next? Like what's your next big frontier? I mean, Good Think
holy
Labs, you're
shit.
trying to go into creative marketing for like basically product advocacy effectively or sorry, that's a
So
butchering of what you're doing.
that's an intermediate step. So my long-term vision is to create a fairly large engineering community that is senior level and retired engineers that are overseeing projects that are done by junior and mid-level
Ah,
engineers and managed by engineers that are moving up to the next level.
that's not what I was expecting.
I know.
I like
And so
that
this
though.
is this is an intermediate step, but what I see is manufacturing marketing is not great. Like it's all very much manual, knock on doors, all that stuff. There's a really big opportunity for content marketing in manufacturing and in engineering. And
Yeah.
so what I see as an opportunity is to engage people with interesting projects that are interesting to engineers, have them completed by engineers. And the real value that I want to add is basically like distribution of this information on my LinkedIn network. So if you're a young engineer that's doing CFD on a chicken gun, like,
What's a
you
chicken
know,
gun?
the chicken gun, yeah, it's so we have to shoot a 6 pound chicken at 400 miles an hour at aircraft
Oh, that's
components.
hilarious.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Mythbusters did it too, I guess, but they sold their gun to Joby Aviation.
Ah, that's
But
fun.
so I've got a partner that wants me to develop that, and I'm like, hey, why not get a small team of like 4 to 5.
You got to freeze the
young
chicken first,
engineers.
Tony. That's the
Yeah.
trick to it.
No, that's the problem. You can't. Well, unless it thawed on re-entry into the atmosphere if you launched it or something. Anyway, but get a small team working on a project like that. Give young engineers an opportunity to showcase their technical prowess. Give a mid-level engineer that wants to pivot into management something to put on their resume that says, "Hey, I manage this team," even if they can't get that experience at their current job, and do it all in a very, very public way because there's no IP associated with it. Like, I don't care. Like, somebody else can build 1 million of these chicken guns and make. That's not the point, And so be able to have an environment with a lot of interesting engineering programs going on that's for the benefit of everyone that's participating in it and subsidized by the people that want to talk to engineers. That's my long-term goal.
I mean, that's not that different than what I do. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's a different approach, but it's a similar objective, right? Which is just doing the best work. I mean,
yeah, I think so. So yeah, that's the long-term goal. The short-term vision is let's start developing those relationships with people that want to talk to engineers and prove out the concept that content marketing can work in a technical environment and in a manufacturing environment. And that's been proved out to some degree, but I think there's a lot of room for more players in that space for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect place to end on. So as we get out of here, is there anything that you want to plug on your way out? Like, anything you'd like to sell people as we
Oh yeah. So Good Think Labs, everybody should sign up for my newsletter. I post every now and then when I get a minute. It's just a bunch of crazy engineering experiments that are going on, or random thought experiments, which are, I have fun writing them. People seem to like reading them, so that's cool. And then I'm going to be launching a podcast here pretty soon called Into the Weeds. And the idea is that there's a whole bunch going on behind the scenes in almost everything that you look at. And so I try to find an expert in AI, in quantum physics, quantum engineering, in what's going on in the aviation industry, and interview them, understand what's going on behind the scenes, and try to bring that out. So
that's awesome.
Into the Weeds.
Into the Weeds. When are you putting out your first ep? Do you have a date planned yet?
I don't have a date planned yet, but I'm imagining sometime in the next 2 weeks, which let's give me a date.
Yeah.
We're going to call it St. Patrick's Day 2025 will be the first episode.
What day is that?
March 17th, 2025 will be the first episode of
So this
Into the
episode
Weeds.
will come out March 9th. So you can find it in a week. Into the Weeds.
Beautiful.
Tony Kelbert, Good Think Labs, coming up in the world. Tony, thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Spencer. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Good talking to you.
You too, brother.
All right. We'll see you.
Thanks for joining us today. If you've made it this far, chances are you'll like other episodes too. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Subscribe today to get notified when the latest episodes release and support the channel. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is sponsored by SKA Robotics. If you're in the market for elite field robotics expertise, please consider hiring SKA Robotics. They sponsor this podcast and solve some of the toughest engineering problems in the world. SKA Robotics can be found at skarobotics.com. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.